Good to be back. Good to see everyone. Thanks for coming out. Before we get into Ole Miss, this Saturday is our first responders game, which is very fitting after all that's been going on across this region since last week with the hurricanes. So certainly, regardless of that, we'd be so grateful for all the first responders and all they do for us, our safety throughout this region, throughout this country. So thanks to them to begin with. And then especially with all they've been doing, and so many have been doing since last Thursday, Friday, over the weekend with the storm. So grateful for them. Thoughts and prayers and hearts go out to everyone that's been afflicted by this storm in South Carolina, Florida, Georgia, the upstate, western North Carolina, East Tennessee. Just some of the video and footage that I've seen is devastating. I got friends in Asheville that reached out to over the weekend and hadn't heard from a lot of them, and just heard from one a few minutes ago for the first time, and it's just terrible. So thinking of them and praying for them as well, and encourage everyone to do the same and help in any way they can as well, and then everyone here in this region as well. I know many here in Columbia are still without power. My family and I were without power till 9:30 last night. We lost it on Friday morning, I guess around 4 a.m., and didn't turn on until 9:30 or so last night as well. So thanks to the power companies and all that as well that have been working around the clock to get everyone's power back. And shout out to my man Fred Gant with Hay Hill Services. Appreciate him coming over to our house. We had 3 trees down in our driveway, and we couldn't get out of the driveway on Friday morning. And appreciate Fred and some of his guys coming over and with a chainsaw and cutting down trees, or not cutting down, but taking out trees so we could get out of our driveway, because 3 trees came down in our driveway. But compared to what a lot of people are going through, that's nothing. And certainly good to have power back as well. I think our team for the most part was okay. I walked in the team meeting on Sunday afternoon and asked how many of our guys didn't have power, because we as coaches wanted to help them. And Josh Simon was the only player, and I was the one coach outside of, I think, Mike Furry and Travian Robinson. So luckily those guys did okay and whatnot. But thinking of all those guys also for sure, and thanks to our first responders, the bye week was good. No question we got better. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday out on the practice field. As you guys know, we gave them the weekend off to get away. I think it was good for our guys to be able to get away for a little bit. We went out recruiting. Some of us did, myself included, on Thursday, and then obviously the storm really messed things up from a recruiting standpoint, not being able to get out on Friday, which is okay. There's a lot more important things than being able to go recruiting because of the damage that storm inflicted. But got better during the bye week, and then got back in here and got back to work on Sunday afternoon and full speed ahead on Ole Miss. A really talented, as we all know, and very well coached team without a doubt. Defensively, a lot of really good players, a lot of new players all across the board from a personnel standpoint. But they have size in the secondary, athleticism at linebacker, really, really good up front on the defensive line. Lead the SEC in sacks, and they've got ends that can rush the passer, tackles that can take over games, so they're really good defensively. And then offensively, you look at statistics, they're pretty much number one in everything right now from an offensive standpoint. We've got to be able to do a great job handling their tempo, no question about it. Offensive line, big, probably the biggest offensive line we'll play this season when you just look at height and weight. Veteran guys transfer from North Carolina, 2 transfers that started at Washington. So really good up front. Quarterback's extremely talented, very experienced, really good group of running backs, and then a really good group of wide receivers as well. So big challenge, but that's life in the SEC every single week as well. We know Saturday at 3:30 will be awesome in our stadium as well, and can't wait to be back in there. We only got 3 games in the month of October, and this is the only home game in the month of October. So know it'll be rocking in there on Saturday, and we certainly absolutely need it to be, and looking forward to getting back in there. Injury-wise, we'll obviously put out a report tomorrow night, but we're in pretty good shape, and that's all I'll say about that. Questions?
Shane, it's been 4 games now, so with I think it's the Kelly Bryant rule where guys can redshirt or whatever, have you guys had any of that with this team?
We've had some conversations with some guys, not so much guys that are playing, but guys that aren't playing that really don't have a major role right now, just kind of how we want this season to go for them. No one that we've said, absolutely, you're going to redshirt. We've tell them, hey, whatever we have to do every single week to win that particular football game, we will. But there are some initial conversations we've had with some guys that still have a redshirt year that don't have a major role right now, and we'll take it week to week. But certainly some things, a possibility with some guys for sure.
And also, not really a question, but some word association. Juice Wells.
Good football player.
I'm going to try to pick your brain a little bit here. Ooh. After, mistakes, I feel like sometimes something you say is like, that's on me, that's on the coaching. How do you address within yourself mistakes that you would say, hey, that is on me? How do you go about that when you're done addressing everyone else's mistakes?
Great question. Try and learn from them. There's try and learn from them and be better the next time, if that makes sense. Whether it be decisions that I've made in games, you try and learn from them. I'm still mad at myself that I punted at midfield against Clemson last year in the fourth quarter when we had 4th and 6 or 7. I'm still mad at myself in 2021 that we had the ball right before the half at Georgia, like on our 1-yard line. We tried to max protect and throw a deep shot and got tackled for a safety. There's some things in the LSU game that I'm disappointed in myself that I didn't do better. I'm still mad at myself in the Gator Bowl. Notre Dame faked a punt on us, and I saw it coming, and I recognized they were in a different formation and that something was up. And I saw it, and I thought we'd be okay defending it, even if they did do something, and we didn't, and we gave up a fake punt. So those, to me, are mistakes that I made that still eat at me. And you just try and learn from them where, okay, we're in that situation again. How are we going to, handle it? And for me as the head coach, it's in-game decisions, but it's also, I think, looking at, practices, and I take notes on everything, and every single day I'm writing down notes. So it helps me now being in year 4 where I can look back at, this week in year 1, year 2, year 3, coming off a bye week, notes from last year that I liked, didn't like, things like that as well. So you're constantly just trying to learn, but also Coach Day always uses the term around here, course correct, where if we do make a mistake or we do something that gets us off course, we're able to correct ourselves and get back on course. So that's what I try and do. Hope that answers your question. Good question.
Shane, a couple quick ones. First, Lenoris, healthy, ready to go.
He was good today. He did everything in practice, for sure.
And second, about you and Lane Kiffin. It seems like you guys would have a lot in common, both growing up in football families, that kind of thing. What's your relationship with Lane?
Solid. I got a ton of respect for him. I wouldn't say that we, talk regularly. We've certainly crossed paths, whether he was at Tennessee as the head coach, and I was an assistant coach here at South Carolina when he was the head coach at Tennessee. And then when he was at Florida at FAU, we played them. Actually, my very first game as an assistant coach at Oklahoma, blocked a punt for a touchdown, so that was good. We played FAU as well. And so I crossed paths with him then, and then just being in meetings in the league. So had a lot of respect for his dad, and certainly there's a lot that we can relate to because we're both, sons of coaches, like you're saying. But I'll get an occasional text or phone call from him about something randomly, kind of like you would think with Lane Kiffin, where it'll come when you least expect it, where you just kind of laugh and shake your head. But ton of respect for him as a coach, in a football mind, and he's done an amazing job at Ole Miss, winning 11 games last season, and then the team that he's put together right now, they're certainly fun to watch.
Hey, Shane, over the last few years, you guys have typically gone into October with multiple losses. You guys are off to a 3-1 start this year.
Thanks, Jack. Jeez, man.
I mean,
I got you.
But the point is, like, what do you feel like is different about this year compared to the other years, other than just slow starts or whatever?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I'm just giving you a hard time. And it's something that we looked at, there's no question. And I think I mentioned it after the Kentucky game where we knew that we needed to get off to a better start in 2024 against Power 4 teams, especially compared to 21, 22, and 23, where 21 we lost to Kentucky and Georgia to start the Power 4 schedule. 22, we lost to Georgia and Arkansas. 23, we lost to North Carolina and Georgia. So we haven't gotten off to good starts against SEC, ACC teams. And it's something that we looked at, really going back to our summer conditioning, looking at tweaking some things that we did in there in the weight room. Certainly our schedule. I think one thing that we did this year was we got into our preseason schedule, or excuse me, our weekly game schedule. We basically did that the whole month of August, where in years past, I would move practice times around. I would move the days off around where, okay, we've got a 3:30 game. We're going to practice at 3:30 all this week. We play night games. We're going to practice a couple times at night this week. We're going to practice a couple times at noon. Whereas this year, we treated every week just like our in-season schedule, where during preseason camp back in August, every Monday was an off day, just like it is now. Every practice was in the morning, just like it is now. And then every Saturday was a scrimmage, and all we did was just change the scrimmage times based on when we were playing Old Dominion and LSU and Kentucky. And hopefully that helped us, and I think it allowed us to get into more of a routine. So I think the biggest thing is, one, we've played well. Two, we've got a veteran team that's done a nice job. And then three, I think just being on a in-season schedule, maybe a little bit quicker, I feel like, helped us, and hopefully we'll continue to that success.
Some offensive players were in here earlier talking about how they feel like they're starting to figure out what they're good at. Do you, between 4 games, a week of self-scout and a bye, now in week 6, do you feel like this offense is starting to whittle down what it's best at and what you can kind of attack better than other things?
Yeah, I think so. I think every week that's a process, and there's no question we're better at running the ball. There's no question that each week we have to be creative in how we run the ball. There's no question that we've got athletic quarterbacks, so continue to accentuate those positives. You see our receiving core; those guys continue to step up and make plays. So I think it's understanding our personnel even better. Really realizing how we're going to win football games around here, without a doubt. And then you mentioned the self-scout. That was critical last week after 4 games to really be able to step back and say, what tendencies do we have, whether it be personnel-wise, formation-wise, that we really need to attack and combat. So, yeah, I think every week you continue to get better, and that'll be the whole key for us, not just on offense, but defense and special teams, that we just continue to get better every single week.
After you watch a game like Kentucky, Ole Miss, do you think to yourself, there's a blueprint of how to beat this team? Or do you think, wow, Ole Miss is going to come out next week with a bunch of stuff we haven't seen on film? We can't rely on Kentucky.
No, I think it's, I don't want to say so much a blueprint or worried so much about how Ole Miss is going to, come out. I'm sure Ole Miss will learn from, those games are from that Kentucky game. I'm sure they walk out of there thinking that they, left a lot of plays out there and want to do things better. So certainly you think about what are their answers going to be to maybe things that gave them trouble against Kentucky. And I know Lane talked about it in his press conference yesterday. Kentucky's defense is structured a lot differently than we are. So you can't really look at it and say, okay, it's going to be the same, because we're just different in a lot of ways. And Kentucky did a fabulous job, and Ole Miss certainly had their opportunities. So when I watch a game like that, watch it as a fan but also as a coach, and you certainly think about, some things that Kentucky did. But that's every week. I mean, when you're watching a team that you're going to take ideas from or steal things from, whatever you want to call it, that's every week. But I walked out of that game thinking, we knew Kentucky was a good team when we played them. they showed that against Georgia the next week, and then they showed that against Ole Miss Saturday. And then I also walked out of there saying, I knew Ole Miss is a really good team, and they showed that on Saturday, and it was just a heck of an SEC football game. Is kind of how I look at it. And then when you get back in here on Sunday, then you really dive into the tape and, maybe things that you thought were happening on the TV copy, you really dive into it when you see the sideline and the end zone views and kind of see different things on both sides as well.
I'll blame this one on Pete since he asked about Lenore's. How was Rocket today?
Yeah, I said that's all I'm going to say about the injuries, and then Pete slipped one in, and now you're going. So I said I think we're in good shape, I think were the words I used. So Lenoris and Rocket were both out there. They both looked good. Were they 100%? I wouldn't say they were 100%, but they both told me they felt great, and they look good, and they'll both be able to do even more tomorrow, I would think, as well. And before anybody asks it, Jared Brown was out there today too. So I'll go ahead and let somebody, get an extra question in, but I'll answer in that one as well.
Hey, Coach. Obviously, in today's world of college football, it's not uncommon to play former teammates. But this one in particular, with Juice Wells coming to town, how do you as a coaching staff ensure that maybe those emotions don't boil over onto the field and potentially cost you guys field position, penalties, XYZ?
Yeah, I think that's every game. You want to make sure you play with great poise, and they've got a good football team, and I know we're going to get the best version of Ole Miss, and what we're focusing on is just getting the best version. They get the best version of South Carolina, and they got a lot of really good players on offense, and Juice is a good player, but when you sit there and watch number 9, the other receiver, they targeted him 15 times Saturday. So we better be not caught up in one player. We better be aware of him, and then we know what a weapon the tight end is. And then 19, the slot receiver, Caden Lee, we recruited the heck out of him, and he had a lot of targets on Saturday when they threw the football. The running back had a lot of targets in the passing game. So for us, it'll just be they have a lot of really good players that we have to prepare for, and on all 3 phases. And it's always about, playing smart football and poise and doing our job, especially when you're in, chaotic environments like our stadium is going to be on Saturday.
Kind of along with that, like what level of player you're going to have to see from your secondary with all of those options that they have and with the tempo that they play as well, are you going to see from the back end guys if you want to come out with a win? Yeah, no, they'll have to play well. We'll have to do a great job tackling, and that's a key for us this week is we've really got to tackle well. That's one thing I thought Kentucky did a great job of last week is making one-on-one tackles, and Ole Miss is going to get their yards. They're going to get their carries and catches. We just got to do a great job tackling, not just in the secondary, but all 11 guys on defense to make sure that those 5-yard gains don't turn into 30-yard gains, and for sure. But certainly the secondary, without a doubt, because they get to going fast, and then there's a miscommunication or somebody doesn't play the right technique, and you're giving up touchdown passes over your head, and that's what can't happen. And it's not just the secondary; it's the linebackers and everyone that have to do a great job from a coverage standpoint, but starting with tackling all 3 levels of the defense.
I literally just took Rocket all out of my story. So, anyways, I feel like you said a couple weeks ago, it might have been the Akron game, just like the pattern of sort of making mistakes right before halftime. Was that addressed at all in the bye week? And sort of how do you address kind of like a weird timing pattern like that? Mistakes before halftime, I'm sorry. I said that. 2-minute drives and things like that. Yeah, just like when Sellers got sacked and in the LSU game and giving up the touchdown to Akron right before, like little kind of letting up before halftime. I did say that. That's one thing I've tried to forget, Lulu. I'm sorry. As well. No, it's we need to be better. There's no question about it. Specifically being better at the end of the first half. Have I addressed that specifically? No. Have I addressed we need to be better playing a full 60 minutes? Absolutely. Have I addressed not necessarily being better in our 2-minute offense, but we need to be better in our 2-minute offense? But how do I handle that? We just continue to rep the heck out of it, and we look like the dang I don't know who the best 2-minute offense is in the NFL, but we look really good in practice. We do it literally every Sunday and every Thursday, and we've done a really good job of it offensively.
as well, and create a lot of situations where, okay, we need a field goal, we need a touchdown, we got 3 timeouts, we got no timeout, we got to go 90 yards, we got to go 20 yards, whatever it might be, creating as many situations as we can when we do it on Sundays and Thursdays. But I think for us, it's not so much when those plays happen, it's making sure we're playing with the right technique. The Akron game, we're in 3 deep coverage, and we just got to make a play on the ball. The LSU game, we got to be better from a protection standpoint and get rid of the ball and whatnot as well. But something that we just continue to work and harp on and emphasize playing a full 60 minutes, because that's what it takes in these games, without a doubt.
Shane, obviously, UNLV went through that situation with their quarterback and, getting surprised there. How do you and coaches kind of approach the idea that to try and prevent that? I'm sure you've game planned that out as far as this NIL stuff goes. What are the best practices to try and prevent that?
I think for us, it's just constant communication. And even before last week, I tell our coaches all the time, make sure we're over communicating with guys on what their role is right now. So from a personnel standpoint, and goes back to David's question about redshirting and all that as well, but from a personnel standpoint, making sure that there's never gray area about why this particular guy is not playing maybe as much as he wants to. And having those conversations. And I tell our players all the time, if you have a question about your role right now, ask us and go to your position coach, come to me. And they do when they have those issues. So that's one thing, is just constantly being honest with them. But then in that particular instance, from an NIL standpoint, it's the same thing, being honest with them. We're not going to – there's a lot of people that overpromise and underdeliver. We're not going to overpromise around here. If anything, we're going to underpromise and overdeliver as well. And I believe we have from that standpoint. And, and then thankful to our state and university that our NIL situations for all of our student athletes can be a little bit more black and white and structured starting this past summer. And that's been really good too, to be able to combat a lot of that also.
I've heard Lane Kiffin say in the past that when recruits come to campus, parents will often comment that they feel like they already know him because he's so active on Twitter. You are also a coach who's active on Twitter. Does that ever happen to you, where recruits, parents come to you and say, like, we feel like we know you, we feel like you're a human being because you're on Twitter and active?
A human being. I get a lot that we love following you on social media, or I probably get more than anything, Jordan, just like we love seeing the family interaction that you have, that, your family after the game, or you saying something about your family on Twitter. I get that quite a bit as well. But I certainly, depends on the age of the people. With a lot of the recruits, it'll be like, man, I love that Soulja Boy video you did. But then with the parents, it'll be like, man, that Office parody spoof you guys did was amazing. A little bit of an older generation. So I think we've been able to do something that hits everyone to a certain level, regardless of their age. But that's probably the biggest thing, is just some of the things we've done on social media, parents commenting on that. But then I've said it before to you guys, recruits families use the words real and genuine with us all the time, that you guys are very real, very genuine. And that's who we are. Like, what people say to me, like I do get this a lot, like, who runs your social media? Like, who's doing all that tweeting? I'm like, me. They're like, no, really, seriously, who does that? And I said, me. No one has ever sent, other than maybe Justin King probably sent the first tweet that I ever had as a Gamecock football coach. Ever since then, any tweet that's ever come from my account has been from me. And I got to think about some dumb ones I've probably sent out. I'm going to deny it if there were some dumb ones in the past. But I do it, and that's probably the biggest thing, is people think that I don't, but I am who I am, so I don't have anything to hide from that standpoint.
Hey, Shane, how many SEC games were you able to watch this weekend?
I think everyone that was on, I believe. So noon, I watched Kentucky Ole Miss. 3:30, I flipped back and forth between Auburn, Oklahoma, and and Texas A&M, Arkansas. At night, I watch Tennessee, Alabama, or Georgia, Alabama. Georgia, Alabama. Flip back and forth one time for South Alabama and LSU, but it was a blowout. So then I was done with that game, and then I went right back to Georgia, Alabama, and I did not watch a play of Mississippi State, Texas. So that's one that I did not. Even though my wife's a State grad, we did not watch that game. We were glued into the other one and watched. I watched a little bit of everything. Watched a little bit of Southern Cal, Wisconsin, and North Carolina, Duke. Watched a little bit of that game. So it was really cool to be a fan for a day and just watch football.
So based on what you saw this weekend, what would you say is the theme of the SEC this season after the first month or so?
Oh, great question. I think really, really deep and really good. There's just a bunch of really good teams in this league. And yes, I know that the SEC, we've lost some marquee non-conference games to teams from, I'm trying to get my conferences straight, from the Big Ten or the ACC. But if you just look at, what we've done, some of the other leagues that have been upset or lost some games to some non-Power 4 teams compared to the SEC, and then just the level of really good players. That's probably the biggest thing that jumped out is when you watch SEC games all weekend, you watch these teams and you're like, my God, there's some really talented players in this league. And there's a reason that the SEC's led the NFL or led the country in draft picks, I think close to 20 straight years, because there's some really, really, really talented football players. And that's just life in this league, Rick. Like, I don't come into the office on Sunday and get ready for an SEC game and turn on the tape and be like, all right, these guys will be a little bit of a breather this week because they're not very talented. Like, everybody's good and everybody's got NFL players, and that just it was reaffirmed over the weekend watching so many games.
You didn't watch the Clemson game?
I did watch a little bit of that one.
I know they're not in the SEC yet. So
no, I did. That was yeah, I'm still mesmerized by the fact that Stanford's in the ACC and that was a conference game. That one kind of threw me, but I did watch a little bit of that one. I watched a little bit in the first quarter, I think. Klubnik took a hit and threw a touchdown pass to somebody in the end zone. I saw that play happen live, and then I'm like, all right, well, that one's over. And then I flipped back to whoever else, Georgia, I guess, is what I was watching.
And obviously, Kentucky beats Ole Miss, and I was asking players how much they read into that. Do you even need to address that with your team? Like, hey, I know we beat this team and they just beat the team we're about to play, or do you even not have to go down that road at all?
I don't think I need to with them, but I did because I'm sure people are saying that, hey, you guys beat Kentucky. Kentucky beat Ole Miss, so you're just automatically supposed to beat Ole Miss, and it doesn't work that way. I mean, we played really well against Kentucky that day. It was a dogfight last Saturday over in Oxford between those two guys, and there's the expectations externally of what people think are supposed to happen, but then there's also making sure that our players, and we talked about that this morning in our team meeting, Hale, was making sure that we have a great respect for how hard winning football games is, how hard it is, and make sure we have a great respect for the process that it takes throughout the week in order to play well on Saturday, and then realizing that no matter what has happened up to this point, all that matters is Saturday, and that we have to play really well in order to win this football game, because this is a really, really, really talented team coming in here. There's no question about it.
Shane, on that note, with these talented SEC players and you guys, beating Kentucky, then beating Ole Miss, kind of the cycle there, do you think that's just how the SEC has always been, or is there more parity now in this age of NIL and the transfer portal, stuff like that?
No, I think there's more parity. I think certainly you can change your roster around pretty quickly. I mean, Rocket certainly has helped our running game, and Spencer came in and helped our offense in the 2 years he was here. But if you look at Ole Miss, Lane said it after last season. They lost to Georgia, Alabama, and he said that we needed to get better on the line of scrimmage. That's the difference between Ole Miss and some of those other teams. So what'd they do? They went out and got Princely, the defensive end from Florida, who it seems like he's been in the SEC forever. I can remember going into his high school, because his high school in Texas was my recruiting area when I was at Oklahoma. So I'm coaching at Oklahoma, and we were trying to recruit Princely to to Oklahoma. Then he goes to Florida, and he's a heck of an edge rusher. Now he's at Ole Miss. Last year when, Nolan at Texas A&M is a dude, and now he's no longer at Texas A&M. He's now at Ole Miss. And then you see the fact that, they've brought in 2 offensive linemen that were at Washington and had a great year at Washington. So they've changed their roster around quickly at Ole Miss, particularly on the line of scrimmage, where you don't look at them and say, well, they're going to struggle against the top teams in the league. Ole Miss is a team that, in my mind, can beat anybody in this league. And then, Georgia is the defending or preseason pick, I guess, to win the league. And you saw what Kentucky did with them and how close that game was. So I certainly think in today's time, there is more parity, and there's a lot of really, really good football teams in this league. And every single Saturday, you have to play really, really well in order to give yourself a chance to be successful. Nothing, John? Wow. All right, man. I like that. Just making sure you were okay.